Welcome, everyone. I'm Kim Brown with the Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities, Transition and Employment Projects, and Teresa Baldry and I will be your moderators for today. Live captioning is available for the session. In order to access the captions, you'll want to open the captioning link, which I've posted in our chat box, and you'll want to open that in a new browser window. The instructions for the captions are also in front of you on a slide. And when you open that browser window, you will have some choices. You can hide the headers and you can minimize the caption box to put it at the bottom of your webinar screen. Please note that the captions will scroll up from the bottom, so you may want to put it toward the bottom of your screen so that you can still see your slides. Today's webinar is sponsored by the Montana Deafblind Project, which is funded in whole or in part by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, or OSAP, and through a contract with Children's Special Health Services at the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services. The statements shared in the presentation do not necessarily reflect the opinion of the sponsoring departments. All attendees are currently muted in order to cut down on background noise so that everyone can hear our presenters. If you would like to ask the presenters a question or make a comment, please type your question or comment into the questions or chat box. And if you're not able to see that on your screen, look to the upper right-hand side of your screen. There should be an orange box with a white arrow in it. If you click on that, it will open your GoToWebinar dashboard, and you should see the questions or chat box, and that's where you're welcome to type in any questions or comments you might have. And please note that only you, the moderators, and the presenters will be able to see what you've typed into that chat or question box. For those of you who requested Montana Office of Public Instruction renewal units when you registered, those will be emailed to you after the webinar, and it can take up to a couple of weeks for us to get those out. Please note that you do have to have requested the OPI renewal unit credit when you registered in order to receive it. We do have a certificate of attendance, and that link to download that certificate will be included in the follow-up email that you receive from GoToWebinar tomorrow. Today's session is being recorded for the Montana Deafblind Project and Transition and Employment Projects resource libraries. And by participating in the webinar, you grant permission for any chats and/or questions that you submit through the webinar platform to be recorded. The video for today's webinar will be posted to the training archives pages for the Montana Deafblind Project and for the Transition and Employment Projects. It can take up to 2 weeks for us to get that video posted, and I will put the URLs or website addresses for those websites in the chat box in just a bit. The handouts for today's session, including the slide deck, are already available on both of those websites, and they're also available today in the handout section of the GoToWebinar platform. So again, if you go up to that orange box on the upper right-hand side of your screen, has a little white arrow in it, click on that. The drop-down menu will appear, and one of the options will be handouts, and that's where you can download the PowerPoint slides as well as the handout for today's session. At the end of the webinar, a survey link will pop up. It's very short, 6 questions. We do ask that you please take the time to fill that out. We really value your input and use it to determine what sorts of topics we should address in the future, and also to try to improve the training that we're providing you. If you don't have time to complete the survey today, the link for the survey will also be in the follow-up email that you receive from GoToWebinar tomorrow. And please note, we do not expect you to complete that survey twice, just once is fine. And now I would like to turn the microphone over to Teresa Baldry for a few words about the Montana Deafblind Project. Teresa?
Thank you, Kim. The Montana Deafblind Project is a source of specialized information, technical assistance, and resources focused on improving early identification, education, inclusion, as well as college and career readiness for individuals with combined hearing and vision loss between the ages of birth through 21. The project builds capacity and infrastructure so students with dual sensory impairments are identified early, receive educational accommodations, and have support transitioning into adulthood. We are based at the University of Montana Rural Institute for Inclusive Communities, And on our next slide, I believe we have a snapshot of our website. This is a place to go and learn more about the project. Our web link is listed at the bottom, as well as our current areas of focus listed as project initiatives. We have 3 staff, all of whom work part-time, and there are multiple ways to connect with us, as you can see. Under Contact Us, there's our email, phone, fax. There's a contact form right on the website on the right-hand side there. We have a Facebook group. And so please feel free to reach out for more information and to explore the website, learn about our project. The term deaf-blind can be misleading. It implies a complete loss, absence of vision and hearing. Another term for deaf-blind is dual sensory impairment. The term deaf-blind may be confusing to families and educators, as most children with deaf-blindness are not totally deaf and or blind. Currently, one of our areas of focus is the Montana Deaf-Blind Census. If an individual, birth through 21, has combined vision and hearing challenges that impact communication, learning, and or functioning, and they require specialized modification and strategies to communicate, the individual is considered deaf-blind and should be added to the Montana Deaf-Blind Census. Many times the challenges are actual vision and hearing losses, but the challenge could also exist because a person is having difficulty processing the information they see and hear. They would still be considered deaf-blind if the sensory loss was due to a processing issue. The loss of vision and hearing, even minor losses, can greatly impact development and learning. Identification of the dual sensory loss enables the child's family and education team to ensure the child gets access to information, education, and the world around them through specialized instruction, interventions, and accommodations. Today, we're focusing on our project initiative of transition and specifically Pre-ETS, Pre-Employment Transition Services. It's my privilege to introduce the team for vocational rehabilitation. And I'm going to start with Sherry Devlin on your left. Sherry Devlin is the rehab counselor supervisor for the Great Falls Blind and Low Vision Services. Sherry has a Master's of Science in Rehabilitation Counseling and a CRC certification. She has over 16 years of experience working as a vocational rehabilitation counselor. The past 6 years have been with Blind and Low Vision Services in Great Falls and collaborating with services with Montana School for the Deaf and the Blind. Sherry has also been involved in the Regional Transition Group in Great Falls and a member of the Youth Services team with Vocational Rehabilitation, assisting in the development of Pre-ETS services for Montana students with disabilities. In the middle, we have Lillian McGinn. She is a Pre-ETS specialist for the state of Montana, serving the Great Falls region. Lillian holds a bachelor's degree in human development and family sciences and is currently in a master's degree program in rehabilitation counseling through the University of Massachusetts, Boston. In her previous positions, she assisted adult-age individuals with disabilities in employment, as well as those in mental health crisis within a crisis facility. She looks forward to assisting her community as well as her surrounding areas in order to help youth find their passion and interest within the world of work. Finally, we have Andrew Lowney. He is the Missoula Region Pre-ETS Specialist. Andrew has a Master's of Science in Clinical Rehabilitation and Mental Health Counseling, as well as a CRC certification. Andrew has been with the Montana Vocational Rehabilitation since June of 2015, starting out as a general vocational rehabilitation counselor, then shifting into the role as Pre-ETS Specialist for the Missoula region. He was recognized as the Montana Rehabilitation Counselor of the Year in 2018 and for Outstanding Pre-ETS Case of the Year for the 2019-2020 program year. Andrew has experience working with students with various disabilities as well as schools of all sizes. Andrew has assisted with various Pre-ETS programs and projects in school settings and out of school settings. Thank you ever so much, all of you, for joining us today and sharing the great work that's being done around Pre-ETS in Montana.
Hello, thank you for the introductions. And I appreciate everybody for being here and being part of this and listening on. It's really difficult, everything being remote. I'm sure we can all relate. Not being able to see the audience, I don't really know who all is on or how many people, but it is so important to have you all be part of this and be willing to continue to learn and try to better understand Pre-ETS in ways that we can continue to help students with disabilities. Wanted to start by just reading a little paragraph from an article that I read yesterday. It just seems so fitting for this presentation, and it's just really true. It's one of those things that I think we all just need to remember and continue to find ways to keep breaking down barriers between employment and our students with disabilities. But the article had led with stating that people with disabilities have been underestimated repeatedly in school and in the workforce. We should never assume that someone might see his or her disability as a tragedy. Many people with great challenges have created, built, and found tremendous success in their lives. And again, after reading that, I just felt like it was really fitting to this. And I think it's just something, like I said, to kind of remind yourselves, every day and just realize that although we have made some great strides and we're starting to do a lot better with getting more employers on board with working with Voc Rehab and getting more individuals with disabilities in the workforce, we still have a lot of work to do. And some of that comes down to, stigma and just stereotypes that are still out there. So again, I appreciate all of your work that everybody does and for everybody attending and looking for ways for us to continue to help our youth with disabilities. And so starting out, I just wanted to give a brief, example or so introduction to Pre-ETS in general, what it is, and then I'll share some examples of how that has related in my in the work that I do. So some of this you guys might already know, and it might be a little bit repeat, but essentially the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014 set VRBS and the rest of our nation's public vocational rehab agencies on a new path. And this new path requires VRBS to serve high school youth with disabilities much earlier than before with the new set of services called Pre-ETS. And so for those of you that have worked with Voc Rehab for a while now, you might remember that it was pretty common for schools to wait until junior, senior year to start referring students. In Montana currently with Pre-ETS, we are serving students as early as freshman year in high school, as long as they're 14 years or older. And also with the WIOA, it wants schools and VRBS to work together to deliver Pre-ETS within the education setting. So that's a really important component on that to remember. Also, another part of this is that it does not require high school students with disabilities to be VRBS clients. Essentially, they do not have to apply for Voc Rehab in order to receive Pre-ETS. They can choose to just receive Pre-ETS services. And so that's a bit of a change too. In the past, everything had to go through Voc Rehab and kind of funnel out from there. And next slide. And so the way that it's structured currently in Montana is we have, in order to serve as many students as possible and to work with as many schools as possible, Montana decided to do an approach where we are contracting with school districts. So the way that that works is each year before the school year starts, we are reaching out to all of the superintendents and all of the school districts around the state, and we're offering them an opportunity to apply for a contract. And the way that that works is the school essentially puts together a work plan. So they establish, what are the Pre-ETS services that they're going to be delivering? How will they deliver them? It's important to note too that this needs to be above and beyond what they would typically be doing. It can't just be typical classes that they're teaching. It's going above what they normally would do. And so the schools that decide that they'd like to do this, they submit a contract proposal to our Pre-ETS Bureau. The Pre-ETS specialist in each region reviews the contracts along with our Bureau Chief, Tammy Hogan, and we approve the contracts that are submitted correctly. And then once they're approved, schools can begin gathering student request forms, which are essentially a form that a student and a parent fill out along with the school staff and the Pre-ETS specialist. And it essentially outlines what services we can offer and what the school would offer. And the student selects which services they want. And it's really important to know that the student is part of that entire process. So we want the student to be in the driver's seat the whole time. And so that's a huge component on it, is the student is selecting the services and they're selecting to participate. And so again, that's one approach we're doing in Montana. And so in these cases, either the school can just provide services to the students and the students may not decide to apply for Voc Rehab, or they can. And so that is an option as well, as we often meet with schools and we get referrals for Voc Rehab. And so students are receiving services through their school, through the contract funding. Voc Rehab also takes applications in the schools to get students on the wait list for Voc Rehab. And then we can also have our Pre-ETS specialists provide individualized services to the students as well. And another thing that's important to note is at all times, Pre-ETS must be delivered in the spirit of work in the community for livable wages and without the use of subminimum wage. And so oftentimes when we're doing work-based learning experiences with students, how it will work is we get connected with a community employer, but we are always, Voc Rehab would always authorize the wages at or above what the minimum wage would be for that area. So that's an important thing to understand as well, is that the students are getting great work experiences and they're also being paid a fair rate. Next slide. And then more on the school contracts. How it works as well is, so the schools that apply for and get accepted for a contract, they can receive up to a maximum of $18,000 per quarter. And that's based on the number of students they're serving and the number of services that they provide. And so depending on the school size, the amount that's paid out per service varies. But right now, that's how it's set up, where a school would submit what's called a quarterly report, where they let us know what students receive Pre-ETS services, what services they received, and how much money they are invoicing based on that amount. And then Voc Rehab pays the school at the end of the quarter based on the services that they provided. And it can be, a pretty significant amount of money, especially in some really small districts. And so we are seeing a lot of interest from schools to do contracts. We have contracts throughout the entire state. Not every school has one, but every region in the state does have multiple schools that are participating. Next slide. And so another important thing to know is just who should be referring and how. This question comes up quite frequently. Oftentimes people don't know how to get their student connected with us. And so I mean, to put it quite simply, anybody can refer, and everybody should refer. But in most cases, what we see from the schools, at least, is the special education case managers are the primary referral source, mostly because they are helping manage the IEPs. They are very well connected with our Voc Rehab counselors and our Pre-ETS specialists. So we get a lot of referrals from the IEP special education case managers. School counselors can refer, 504 coordinators, parents, you can always give us a call. Outside providers, so like if somebody sees a therapist or an independent living center or anybody else in their life that thinks that they might benefit from the program, they can refer. And then in schools, oftentimes they have a CSCT mental health staff, whether it's CSCT or AltaCare, and those staff can refer as well. Typically for the Voc Rehab part, like if a student is wanting to apply for the Voc Rehab program and go to our wait list, we try to prioritize those referrals based on significance of disability, the age/grade level of the student. And the reason behind that is because we are currently in order of selection. Anybody who applies goes to the wait list, and those with the most significant disabilities will be served first. Often what we find too is those with the most significant disabilities may have more difficulty participating in Pre-ETS services than other students do. And so if they can get on the wait list sooner and come off the wait list and receive both Voc Rehab and Pre-ETS services, that seems to benefit those students the most. One thing that's important to note too, as it comes to referrals for Pre-ETS and for Voc Rehab, is don't try to make the decision for us. So if the student has a disability, refer them. Don't try to decide what priority level they're going to fall into, or think that they're not going to benefit or that they can't qualify. If there's any question, just refer, and then the counselor or the Pre-ETS specialist will decide on our end. And then again, the little note on the bottom too. So that prioritization with seniors and significant disability mostly is for the voc rehab application part. As far as pre-ETS goes, as long as a student is in 9th grade and 14 or older, that pre-ETS referral can start whenever. Students can start completing those pre-ETS request forms right at freshman year in high school. So I would encourage for the pre-ETS part of the referral is just as soon as somebody's interested or you've had the opportunity to talk to them about it, get them connected with pre-ETS. Next slide. Another issue that we hear a lot from schools is that it can be really hard to gather the pre-ETS request forms, and a lot of schools aren't quite sure how to do it. So these are just some ideas, but what we found success is discussion of pre-ETS during our VR intake meeting. So if you do have a student that's being referred to voc rehab and wants to receive both services, we can get that form completed during that meeting. Pre-ETS form presented by special education case manager during IEP. That's a really good time to do it. Obviously with COVID, things have gotten a lot more complicated, but in normal circumstances, the IEP is typically the place where everybody is in one spot together in person. And so it's a good opportunity to have the student and the parent sign the form while you have them there. And it's a good introduction into pre-ETS during that IEP meeting, especially when it comes to the transition and the vocational part of the IEP. Another thing too, so for students that don't have IEPs, the 504 coordinators, and that obviously varies from school to school. Some schools have assistant principals that handle the 504s, some have the school counselors. And so that's another thing too, is if there's an annual 504 meeting that the student's participating in, pre-ETS can come up in that meeting as well. And then CSCT staff, again, if there's internal mental health staff, they should be providing this information to the parents as well. Voc Rehab and our pre-ETS team have also created a letter that can be mailed to parents that explains what pre-ETS are and the steps for getting the pre-ETS process started. So we can send a letter that also includes our student request form. And so that's something as well, if anybody who's attending today is an educator and they're looking for ways to get the information out, please reach out to us so we can give you a copy of that letter. It also goes out too with our contract information that we send to school districts. And then the other thing too is a lot of our pre-ETS specialists go to the schools regularly, or at least, prior to COVID, and have, office time at the school. So that's a good opportunity. Myself, I'm at multiple schools, usually weekly, and then other schools monthly. And so that's a time where I could also meet with students and talk to them about pre-ETS and, get them the form and have them bring it home. So, yeah, and so this next part is the pre-ETS activities and services that are typically provided in schools. So these are things that we've had good success with, and these are some great services that our students have been able to utilize. A lot of which has come from funding from the pre-ETS contracts. And so many of the schools have vocational prep courses. Some didn't have them before they had the contract, but with the pre-ETS funding, they were able to then budget to add either extra staff or have an extra class to be able to do specific voc prep classes. During these classes, it's a great opportunity for, anything pre-ETS related. The class can center around workplace readiness training, where students can learn how to write resumes. They can do cover letters. They can do mock interviewing. They can also do on-campus and off-campus work-based learning experiences. Some of the schools we work with will take students off campus to different businesses and do some volunteer work. We also have some schools that have like coffee carts and other different small businesses within the school that students help with. A unique approach that several of the schools in my area do are pre-ETS summer camps, and those can be funded through pre-ETS money as well. And so it's a great opportunity too for school staff that may want to pick up some extra income and some hours in the summer, and that feel like they might have some students that would benefit from some summer activities. The school could essentially put together a summer camp, whether it be the whole summer or just a couple of weeks, and can provide those pre-ETS services during that summer camp. Some of the schools here have gotten really creative with it and have created a good program where the first half of the day, students will do some soft skills training and learn about work and all of the basic information like that. And then the second half of the day, we'll go off campus and visit and tour businesses and do informational interviews and job shadows. And so it's a really hands-on experience, and it's been really beneficial. Other activities in schools are interest inventories, and those are, Montana Career Information Systems has free interest inventories. Some schools have purchased CareerScope, which is an aptitudes and interest inventory. Other schools have purchased Virtual Job Shadow, which also has some interest inventories. So those are some activities that can be done through Pre-ETS. And then they've also brought in a lot of presenters from some of our programs we work with, like the Montana Youth Transition program in the past has gone into schools and done student-led IEP presentations. And that's a really good activity to help students get more familiar with what their IEP is and being able to advocate for themselves. Another program, Moving On in Montana, introduces students to college and gives them an immersive experience to college life. And so a lot of the schools can bring in those presenters as well. Independent living centers are great resources as well, especially for self-advocacy training. Job Corps, job service. So any of those community providers, those can be really beneficial to bring into the school and help provide services to your students as well. And then employer presentations and classes are really beneficial as well. Maybe you have 5 students in class who want to learn about construction. And so you could reach out and have a construction worker come in and talk to the students about what the job is like, specifically. So there's a lot that you can do on campus as well if the school is not able to have students leave campus during the school day. And I know in some rural areas that can be really difficult due to transportation. This is just a description of what a typical intake meeting would look like. So if you are somebody who's looking to refer and you're not quite sure how to describe it, usually what will happen is the school will send a referral to the Pre-ETS specialist, because the Pre-ETS specialist is the primary contact with the school, and they will set up a meeting. And what I have found, at least in my area, that has worked the best is if the school has at least one staff person that can participate. That's usually really helpful, because there's a little bit more trust there, because the parent and the student already know the teacher, and so there's kind of a little bit more rapport already. And so those intake meetings can include the parent, the student, a school staff member, the Voc Rehab counselor, and a Pre-ETS specialist. And so we all get together and we meet and talk about, what are the students' interests? What are some things that might be difficult? What are some things that they might want to try? And we complete whatever paperwork is needed at that time as well for applying for Voc Rehab and for Pre-ETS. And then at that time too, we can complete the Pre-ETS form, we can complete the Voc Rehab application. It's really important too to build rapport with the student and the parent. It can be intimidating to set up a meeting with anybody, let alone somebody that you have no idea who they are, and you're now having to share a bunch of personal information about yourself. And so it's a good way to just build rapport, get to know the student and parent. And then it's also an opportunity for us to connect people with other resources. And I don't know if people are aware, but Voc Rehab, one of our core services is information and referral. Every office has a lot of great resources and people that we know that we can connect people with. And so some of those might be, maybe we're working with a student with significant needs that has never been referred for a developmental disability program. We can help them get connected. Or an independent living center to help with things like benefits planning and just knowing how to apply for Social Security and things like that. And so there are a lot of, a lot of great information that's covered during these intake meetings. Next slide. And so for Pre-ETS specifically, the eligibility is that, or requirement is just that it has to be a student with a disability between 14 to 21 years old and in high school, college, or another recognized training program. And so this, differs a little bit from the Voc Rehab eligibility process, because the Voc Rehab eligibility process does require gathering records and a lot more information to determine eligibility. On this end, if we're working with a school and a school staff member is helping complete the Pre-ETS form, they can verify that the student has an IEP, 504, or other disability on that form. And it can streamline the process a little bit to where essentially if a student just wants to get started with Pre-ETS services and doesn't want to apply for Voc Rehab right away, it only takes that verification form to be completed, and then we can get things moving forward. And so again, that's the eligibility for Pre-ETS in itself.
Andrew, I was just going to let you know there's a question in chat.
Okay.
It says, is there a way to get our contracts by the start of a school year versus several months into it? I've already held the majority of my IEP meetings. Does it matter if you have a student enrolled before you have been approached for each school year?
So when it comes to the contracts, the reason why it's set up now, so it used to be that it went year round, but that didn't make a whole lot of sense because most students weren't in school in June, July, or August. And so for that first quarter, it was really hard to be able to gather forms and to actually be providing Pre-ETS services. So right now, the way that it works is the contracts can be submitted and gathered. They're already due by November 15th, but what happens is it allows the school still to bill for any services that they provide during that that first quarter, that October, November, and December quarter, and then they submit the quarterly reports in January. But you can start gathering forms at any time, especially, I know it's tricky if you haven't had a contract before and you haven't been advised on what needs to be done yet, but the schools that I work with that have already had a contract, they're just continually gathering forms throughout the year, just anticipating that there will likely be a contract the next year, or they're at least hoping so. They're gathering forms continually, and then those forms can be used year after year. I don't know if that answered the question very well. And so let's see. So the next slide, this is just a brief description on what the Pre-ETS services are that schools can provide, what our Pre-ETS specialists provide, and our community rehab providers. But Pre-ETS are split into 5 categories. Job exploration counseling, which is helping students choose a job that matches the interests, strengths, and abilities. Work-based learning experiences, which can help set up things like informational interviews, job site tours, paid work experiences. Those are going to be more hands-on and more interactive. We can also help with counseling on post-secondary programs, and this is, providing information about college. We can set up campus tours to help students decide if college is right for them. We can also help students enroll and then communicate with disability student services to help them get accommodations and apply for financial aid. And then we also have workplace readiness training, which is more going to be things like soft skills training, helping teach a student appropriate work habits. This might be activities like setting up mock interviewing in the classroom. And then we have introduction and self-advocacy to help teach students about their rights and responsibilities, knowing how to ask for accommodations and services that they need, and how to be a leader in their own life. And this is where programs like the student-led IEP through Montana Youth Transition is really helpful, because if students can start thinking about accommodations and knowing how to advocate for themselves while they're in high school, it's going to make it so much easier in college, because the reality is when they do reach college, the teachers and professors aren't going to talk to their parents. It has to come from them, and they have to be good self-advocates. And so the self-advocacy part of Pre-ETS is really important and really crucial in a service that I think students greatly benefit from. And so I talked a little bit about the contracts before, but there are actually 4 ways right now on how Montana is delivering Pre-ETS. So school contracts being one of them, where a school utilizes the funding through a contract to provide Pre-ETS to eligible students. And this is a really beneficial way to deliver it. As everybody on this call knows, if you're from Montana, it is a huge state. No program in Montana ever seems to have enough funding. And so it can seem nearly impossible to be able to reach every area of the state. By doing contracts, though, it's great because we can work with the schools to help develop activities and resources and things like that, so that the schools can provide it in-house and within their own community as well. So school contracts have been extremely successful. We also have counselors / Pre-ETS specialists provided. And basically how this would work is the Pre-ETS specialist would provide Pre-ETS directly to the individual, either one-on-one or in a group setting. Can attend IEP meetings and assist with the transition planning and vocational goals, and can also work with schools to increase and improve delivery of Pre-ETS to students. So Pre-ETS specialists can really work with schools to put their heads together to figure out, what are some services that they might benefit from, and really help them develop some services and programs. And then counselor purchase, these would be things like, in areas of the state, there's community rehab providers that contract with Voc Rehab, and they really help us with the groundwork. And so let's say we have a student that wants to do a work experience outside of school, and the school doesn't have staff that's able to do that, or maybe it's not something that can be done during the school day. We can refer to one of our providers who will contact businesses and set up what's called a work-based learning experience. And it gives a student an opportunity to go in and work and try that job out for 40 hours. And Voc Rehab pays the wages during that 40-hour work experience. And so it's a really great service. And there's other things too that our CRPs can do as well. And then we also have some amazing special projects in the state, like the Montana Youth Leadership Forum, Montana Youth Leadership Forum Minis, Montana Youth Transition, and Moving On to Montana. Those are just a few that we've worked with, and those provide some great resources for students as well. And then another thing that's important to note too, I know it can be confusing at times because the old traditional way that it was done was students had to apply for Voc Rehab. They didn't receive services unless they were in a plan or an IPE. And now there's multiple ways that students can access Voc Rehab and Pre-ETS. So you can either have a case that's an active Voc Rehab case with an IPE that's receiving Voc Rehab and Pre-ETS services. Those are becoming more common now as we're taking more students off the wait list, but they're still, not, those cases aren't as common as they may have been in the past before we went into order selection. But the way that would work is a student would have applied for Voc Rehab, been on the wait list, and now their name has come up on the wait list and they're in an IPE. And so they're now receiving both Voc Rehab services and Pre-ETS services. And what that might look like is for a student that has significant support needs, it's really challenging to be able to set them up with a work-based learning experience strictly through Pre-ETS because Pre-ETS cannot pay for job coaching. Voc Rehab can though. So if a student is in a plan and they're in an active Voc Rehab case, they can utilize both services. So Pre-ETS can set up the work experience and pay the wages, and Voc Rehab can pay for the job coaching. So that's what that case type would look like. Another case type would be if somebody has applied for Voc Rehab and they're on the wait list for Voc Rehab services, and they choose to just stay on the wait list and not participate in Pre-ETS, that's fine, they don't have to. But that would be a case type. And then another one could be somebody receiving Pre-ETS only, and they're not on the Voc Rehab wait list. Maybe they just filled out a Pre-ETS request form and they just want to do Pre-ETS, and so they're receiving Pre-ETS.
Sorry to interrupt, Andrew. This is Kim Brown, and just quickly, I wanted to let audience members know that there appears to be a system glitch today with GoToWebinar, and so some of the questions that you are typing in are actually appearing to audience members. So please do make sure when you type in a question or a comment not to include confidential information. If we see anything come in like that, we will delete it right away. But if you have a confidential kind of question to ask any of the presenters, please just include your name and a contact email address or phone number for yourself, and we will get back to you on that. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Andrew.
Oh, no problem. And we will have some time for questions too at the end. I can answer a few, and then we'll make sure that Lillian and Sherry have a chance to present as well. But we definitely did put some time aside for questions. I would say too, if it's a specific thing, and it's a specific personal experience that you've had with the school or with a Pre-ETS specialist or Voc Rehab in general, that would probably be something better discussed either with that specific Pre-ETS specialist or Tammy, who is our bureau chief. And so, depending on what the question is, I might defer you to Tammy to help address with that, especially if it is something that seems like it would require some extra attention outside of this. I think our questions are going to be more for general, related to Pre-ETS as a whole. And so this, I just wanted to share some success stories that we've had and on how, at least I have seen Pre-ETS to be beneficial and successes that I've had. And so the first person on here, this is just, and this is a wide range of different abilities and different disabilities. This particular student had an interest in computer and web design. And so through Pre-ETS, we set them up with the job shadow at a local company. She really liked it and did a work-based learning experience from there, a 40-hour work experience. And it went so well that they actually hired her on afterwards. And so again, and this was a student who, with no previous computer experience, was in high school at the time, got hired on at a company making $17 an hour helping out with web design, and it was able to learn it on the job. And so sometimes that happens too, where we do a work-based learning experience, and sometimes it turns into almost like an apprenticeship where they land a job after it. Another one we had was, I think the important part too is having connections with Voc Rehab and our Pre-ETS specialists, and just having some of those outside providers from schools, is we can sometimes we can build some good rapport, and we can also be another voice of reason. And so this particular student turned 18 and was having some trouble with deciding what he wanted to do, and was not making great decisions. And he actually decided he was going to drop out of school, and he was only about 2 months from graduation. And the school could not reason with him. He would not listen. He was set on it. And he was so set on just finding a job. And so I was able to work with him and the rapport that we had built to encourage him to not drop out of school and to finish, and to show him really what the outlook would look like for employment if he was not a high school graduate. And so ultimately he did. And part of that too was, I won't say bribing, but he really wanted to work and to do a work experience. And so I had to take that approach of, he wasn't technically a student if he dropped out, so he was no longer eligible for Pre-ETS. And if he were to agree to go back to school and finish it out, we could do Pre-ETS and set him up with a work experience during that time frame. And he really liked that idea. And so again, through developing that strong relationship and being able to show actual information and to kind of give him that glimpse of what the real world looks like outside of school for employment, he ended up graduating. So that was a really cool success, I felt like. And then another situation, we had a student who was very interested in becoming an architect, and had done multiple job shadows and informational interviews with our architects. And we also helped explore different colleges like University of Idaho and MSU Bozeman. And all the information that we gained ended up being really crucial for this person, because going into it, there is the assumption that she could just go to the Missoula College and do 1 year of generals and then transition over, or 2 years. And we actually came to find out that the Bozeman program was a 5-year architectural program. And so it did not allow for people to take generals, because you start in those programs right away. And so it was really beneficial, because it saved that student at least 1 or 2 years of extra schooling by us helping explore and do all that exploration. And then another success was a student I had worked with who in high school was at a 3rd grade reading level, had less than a 2.0 GPA all through high school, really hated school, did not think school was for him. But we were able to get him connected with a program that's not around anymore, but Rev Up Montana. And they were able to help him research some jobs within the trades and some programs. And we were able to research some things that allowed him to do hands-on work, which is what he really liked. And we ended up finding the perfect school for him. He ended up going into Great Falls Community College, which was a 1-year program. And he completed it within that year. He's got a 3.5 GPA throughout the whole program. And within a week of graduating, he secured a job. And so this, to me, I felt was a really huge success, because this was a student that felt like he just could not do school. And he always felt stupid, and that he would never be able to do anything beyond high school, because he was not doing well in school. And we were able to show him what, recognize what his strengths were, and help encourage him to explore those strengths. And it ultimately led to him securing a really good job and being really successful in post-secondary school. And so I think that just goes to show a lot of the students that you're working with that may not be doing well in a traditional school setting. That's not to say that they can't go on and complete college. You just have to find the right strengths and supports and resources. And I think you'd be amazed at how much success so many of our students can have. And those are just a few. I feel like we could go on forever. I like bragging about my students and what they do. And so I could spend probably 2 hours talking about them, but we'll move on from that for now. And so part of why this is all important, and I think all of you have probably seen this, is that individuals with disabilities tend to graduate at a lower rate than non-disabled peers, they're less likely to go on to post-secondary education, they're unemployed at a higher rate. And so getting them started with pre-ETS as early as possible, it really helps decrease unemployment rates for individuals with disabilities. It provides motivation to graduate high school, and it helps students live a more fulfilling and independent life beyond high school. And then this I'm not going to go too far in depth on. There will be a presentation coming up in January by Sherry Reed Anderson, who's out of Voc Rehab as well, on discovery and customized employment. I just wanted, because this presentation does have a focus on working with students with most significant needs, just wanted to bring up that discovery can be a really good option and a really good resource for students. I felt like the most success with the discovery case came from high school, because it allows a lot more collaboration when you have school staff, the community rehab provider, the Voc Rehab counselor, all to be able to, work together and collaborate. Also, what I find is while students are in school, they have so many more supports. They have the teachers, they have paraeducators, they've got other support staff there. And oftentimes when students graduate, they lose a lot of that support. And part of the discovery process is to get to know the student on a more personal basis and to be able to connect with the other people in their life that know them. And so if you think about it, while they're in high school and they have all these supports in place, it's a great way to get everybody together to really brainstorm some ideas. What's really great about it too is it allows the community rehab provider does more personal stuff, like going to the student's home, meeting the family, observing them at home. And as we all know, everybody behaves different in different environments. And so it can be really crucial for that provider to get some really good information on how that student behaves at home and share that with the teacher, who can then work on some of those things at school, or vice versa. And I do want to be clear, discovery and customized employment in itself, those are not pre-ETS services. They are Voc Rehab services, but they can easily be combined with pre-ETS. So you could have a school doing work-based learning experiences on campus or off campus, and the person doing discovery can use those experiences as a way to gather more information about the student and to be able to see more of their strengths. And same with the school. It's just a really good service and a way to just, it also requires everybody to think outside of the box, which is what we have to do sometimes with students that might have more significant support needs. And so I just wanted to briefly touch on that as just something to keep in mind. If you are an educator and you're working with students that may have come off the wait list and you've been scratching your head for a couple of years on thinking what would be a good job fit, it may be worth reaching out to the Voc Rehab counselor and just asking if discovery would be appropriate, and thinking of ways that you can combine pre-ETS and that together. And that's all I have on that topic today, and we'll turn it over to Lillian. I guess unless, are there other...
Andrew, there's a question in the chat maybe you want to answer. It says,
Sure.
do you offer job shadows or work experience for pre-ETS students, or do they have to be VR eligible?
So the great thing with pre-ETS and with the changes that have come about is that students don't have to do Voc Rehab to participate in the pre-ETS services. And so job shadows and work experiences all fall into the work-based learning category under pre-ETS. And so if a student, they can apply for Voc Rehab and go to the wait list, or they don't have to. Let's say they're in a school contract and the student completed a pre-ETS request form. That student is eligible to receive pre-ETS. There is no wait list for pre-ETS services right now. And so even if you're not in a school contract, school staff can get pre-ETS request forms from the specialists in their area, and we can help get those completed. But you can refer students just specifically for pre-ETS as well. You don't have to refer for Voc Rehab. And so, yeah, we can do job shadows, work-based learning experiences. All of those 5 pre-ETS categories that I described are covered as pre-ETS services that students don't have to be connected with Voc Rehab for.
Okay, I think that was the only question in chat. I think.
Yeah, I don't see anything else. And if anyone does have any other questions, go ahead and keep posting in chat, or at the end of the presentation, feel free to ask.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. So tagging off of what Andrew was talking about, one thing that we wanted to touch base with you guys on today was the importance of coming off the wait list and why it's so important to have students apply for services as soon as possible. The combination and the collaboration between VR and Pre-ETS can be so beneficial to students with significant needs. One reason being that there's just so much more funding and services available through the general VR program that can just lead to a lot more success in terms of students searching for jobs and what will be the best fit for them. One thing that's a major change between Pre-ETS and VR and having both options is that Pre-ETS does not have the availability to offer one-on-one job coaching to students when they're in a work experience. When they come off the waitlist for VR, VR can then pay for the one-on-one job coaching that's necessary if they require it. We do try to have students attempt a work experience as much as possible on their own just to get a general idea of their skills. We do offer like 10 hours of work site training just to get the student comfortable in the first 10 hours of their 40-hour work experience. But unfortunately, past that point, Pre-ETS does not have the funding to pay for one-on-one job coaching. However, when they come off the waitlist, VR then can pay for a CRP or someone else to join the student to do the one-on-one, hand-over-hand type of work experience that they might require. There's also just a lot more opportunities through Voc Rehab. So when providing services, Voc Rehab also has things like on-the-job supports, job search assistance, and things like that that can be a nice transition from Pre-ETS to VR. So if they graduate or are not going to college anymore, or if they age out at the age of 22, then VR can then have a nice transition. They've already gotten to know the student a little bit more, and they know what experiences and things that they have done through Pre-ETS. So we always like to push applying as early as possible is so important because we do have that wait list, and of course the people with the most significant needs come off our wait list first. So apply as soon as you can, which is at the age of 14 while they're in the 9th grade, and send everyone our way. Don't assume that they won't be eligible or things like that. Please leave that up to us and the VR counselors. Thank you. So I just wanted to talk about some examples that we have in regards to working with students with significant needs. In our first example here, we were working with students who are nonverbal. Our Pre-ETS specialist in the Helena region, her name is Ann Carpenter, put this together actually, and she worked in conjunction with Family Outreach, which is one of our CRPs there. So basically what they saw was a need for a class with 4 students who all of these students were low functioning, had low mobility, and most of them were nonverbal. So what they decided was the best format for this class was to have a 1-to-1 ratio for each student, which ended up being extremely successful. So 2 of the adults were actually members of Family Outreach, so they worked for Family Outreach, and then the other 2 members were parents of 2 of the students, I believe, or 3. So in this format, they had a weekly outline. So in the first week, basically what they did was just introductions and really getting to know each student individually and learning about their cues, their gestures, what kind of mobility they had and what they felt comfortable with, which really set them up for success in the weeks that followed, because then they had a good idea and basis to start their program with. So in weeks 2 to 4, what they were really focusing on was looking at each individual student's skill set, because when they can learn what a student is capable of and what abilities they have, they can look for jobs that have a good fit within those skills, which also kind of ties into discovery. They look at what kind of jobs maybe would fit those skill sets, and then advocate and reach out for those students in those job areas. They also tried to do pictorial interest inventories with the students, but unfortunately they tried to do it in a group setting. And what they found was that students would look at what the other students were picking and would just kind of base their answers on what other students wanted. So what they were hoping to do was to do a more individualized pictorial interest inventory, but unfortunately, if we go to the next slide, COVID-19 happened. So with COVID-19, they had to shut down the weekly sessions. Family Outreach was no longer going to do classroom settings, at least for the time being, and unfortunately, they haven't been able to pick it back up since. But but it was extremely beneficial and very successful. They found that when you look at a population and you see a need, especially for students with significant disabilities, then you can create a setting in which they can be successful and we can learn about each of their own unique interests and their own unique abilities in that kind of setting. So what they kind of had students do too was they were making sure, kind of gauging how they followed directions. They also had them do different types of activities like sorting and shredding. They had to individualize each of these activities based on each student. So with the sorting, they found that 2 or 3 of the girls that were in the group didn't have the dexterity. They first were trying to have them sort out like nuts and bolts into different shapes and sizes, but they didn't have the dexterity to pick up something so small, so they switched to socks because socks were easier for them to grab and sort. So it was really cool to see a class that was in a group setting, but also had the ability to individualize it for each student. So there was a young man actually who was in the activity who was higher functioning than his peers. However, he was able to follow all directions and he completed every activity that they put in front of him really well. Since he was so good at sorting and things along those lines, what they decided to do was set up a work experience for him through 406 recycling. And so through that work experience, actually, he did such a great job that they offered him a position. So as we can see that classes like this can be extremely beneficial. Students learn a lot of skills and they kind of get a good understanding of what their abilities are. They also are in a group setting, so they see other students like them and get to make friendships and things along those lines, as well as get job opportunities out of classes like this. So this was another really great example of working with students with significant needs and having a successful story come out of it. What we're really hoping is for in the future being able to continue to have classes like this. Obviously with COVID, we've had to be pretty flexible. Some things we've been able to do online, but we know that a lot of classes like this are most beneficial in person. So we'll probably have to wait until most of this COVID restrictions are over, but this was just a great example to start off with. So these are some more examples of our work with students with significant needs. So in Great Falls Public Schools, there's a program, maybe some of you have probably heard of it. It's called Secondary Life Skills. It's unique in the fact that there's not many other areas in the state of Montana that offer a program like this. Basically, the format is that high school students can graduate at 18, but they don't receive their diploma. They decide to continue to stay in the school setting for another couple years until they turn the age of 21. And in this setting, what they're really learning is everyday tasks, everyday life skills that are required of them once they have to be more independent and move out of the high school setting. So these activities included like cooking and cleaning, understanding the basics of everyday life, making sure that they knew different bus routes. If they had like a work experience, they learned the bus route to get to that work experience, as many of the students in these classes did not have a driver's license. And transportation is always an issue, so we like to give them different options and teach them different ways to get to places in case for some reason one form of transportation is not available. So since actually Great Falls Public Schools often has a school contract with us, they also work on pre-ETS activities during this time, so they are also doing work experiences, and they have the opportunity to really individualize the opportunities for each student. They look at what each student is interested in, their goals. They've usually done most of this stuff in the first 4 years of college, so now it's really focusing on the work experiences and getting that experience in the real world while they're in secondary life skills. And then unfortunately with this program, they do age out and are no longer eligible at the age of 21, much similar to pre-ETS when you age out at 22 once you turn 22. So, but it does offer such great activities and learning tools that they're gonna bring with them after they graduate. So some more examples. So one thing that we always push for is interagency collaboration. We love to build teams and support systems for students so they have more than one resource and more than one individual that they can go to and ask for support and questions. So one example is the Developmental Disability Program, or DDP. We love working with DDP just because they can utilize their cost plan if they're just on pre-ETS and aren't off the wait list for VR. They also can allow payment for more like one-on-one job coaching, because Pre-ETS doesn't cover it, and if they're still on the wait list and VR can't pay for it, then we can look to DDP to maybe assist us. They also just offer some great information on the student. If we're not able to get a hold of families, we can go through DDP to try and see if they have contacts. We also utilize their case managers to see what other experiences they may have had or have had happened to them in their previous experiences, if they've worked before or just in school in general. We also love to work with schools, as Andrew talked about with our school contracts. We utilize a lot of times school staff to provide Pre-ETS activities, especially when we're working with students with significant needs, as they have the staff and the facility to offer para-educators or other personnel to provide one-on-one job coaching if it's required. They also just offer a lot of individualized services in the school setting that we're not able to do, especially right now with COVID. Pre-ETS specialists are not really allowed in the schools unless we're given specific access or are allowed to go. And another agency that we'll utilize, well, it's multiple agencies depending on the region, are our CRPs or community rehab partners. These guys are great about going out into the local communities and advocating for students, seeing what kind of things are needed in different employment settings and finding students that would fit those needs. They're just a great way to set up work-based learning experiences, especially when we don't have the manpower to go out and advocate for ourselves. The CRPs just already have that great connection with the community and know the students well, so they can go out and advocate for them. And then finally, we have ORI, or Opportunities Resources Incorporated, and job clubs. So agencies like these offer students different unique opportunities to have maybe mock interviews or role playing, which we highly encourage. These situations allow them to practice being uncomfortable, how to maybe answer uncomfortable questions, or how to navigate an interview, especially with individuals that they might not know. We try to set them up in an interview with individuals that they're not as familiar with, so it kind of puts them out of their comfort zone. We also want to make sure that they know about professional attire, what kind of attire is required for the job that they're interested in, just because we know, especially in Montana, professional attire can mean a lot of different things in a lot of different work settings, so just making sure students are aware of that. And then finally, we want to make sure that students know their elevator speeches. So making sure that students have that 2 to 3 minute speech about themselves, their abilities, they know how to advocate for themselves, and that they can show what they bring to the table in terms of a specific job. As Andrew was telling me, there's many students that he does this repetitively with, and they have them memorized and down packed. So repetitive action is definitely the thing you want to keep in mind when working with these students. And so finally, the way I just wanted to leave off my part of the presentation was that we know that working with these students can be very challenging. We know every student is different, and one method isn't going to fit every single student. So we're really here to help you get creative and think of different opportunities, different ideas, and different methods in order to serve this population. We love to bounce ideas around, and that's what we're here for. So if you have questions, if you require assistance, or anything along those lines, we're always a resource to you. And we know that sometimes this can be a thankless job, so we just wanted to let you all know how much we appreciate your work with students, and we thank you very much. All right, I don't know if there's any questions in the chat. If not, I will pass it along to Sherry. Sherry, are you there?
I'm wondering where I'm at. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. I'm getting all kinds of things popping up here on my screen, Kim.
You look great on this end. We see you, and we see a slide serving students.
Okay, good, because I lost the slideshow.
Yeah, I also don't see it, but maybe we're good.
Okay, so thank you, Andrew and Lillian, for sharing. Great overview of what Pre-ETS is. My part in this is working with students who have visual impairments, deaf and hard of hearing, or deaf blind. I, as in the introduction, work in the program of our blind and low vision services. And with that, work directly with that population of students. So one of the things that we've been working on in that population, excuse me, is building collaboration between myself, the Voc Rehab counselor, and the Pre-ETS specialist. And we have just recently hired all of our Pre-ETS specialists around the state. So this is new. So some of you out there may not have had contact with a specialist yet, just because we have recently been filling all those positions. So building that collaboration has been crucial in a team effort with that. We have a school contract with the Montana School for the Deaf and Blind, and so as Andrew was talking about with school contracts, we have that with the school, using that with those students in this area, and I help facilitate that in the Great Falls area. But then coordinating that into summer work experiences and activities in their home communities when those students go back home for the summer. Some other things, assisting with off-campus job opportunities. So perhaps the school can't man students getting out there in the community after school hours. That is something we can do through the Pre-ETS services and direct counselor services, and that collaboration with the school. Another part is assisting classroom teachers. Going into the classroom, working with those students in the classroom, building off of curriculum that they're doing in the classroom, and then we can take that another step into their homes and communities. And just really the big piece we see is building that collaboration between the school, myself, and the Pre-ETS specialist. And then another part of that is we have students that are here on the campus, but also we have students out in the communities that are going to school in their home schools. And so connecting with those outreach workers with Montana School for the Deaf and Blind, and to get them connected in their home communities with the Pre-ETS specialists in those areas and the counselors in those areas. Okay, next slide. So how are we doing that? And a specialization part with our program is we have orientation mobility specialists and vision rehabilitation therapists on staff. And so we've been working on sharing curriculum to support learning. So again, what's going on in the classroom to assist these students with these visual impairments, sensory disabilities, and then how can we build that bridge to their home, to their job. So some of that is supporting curriculum. Maybe the curriculum they're using in the school, then our vision rehab therapists take that into the community and like their home management, self-management, food management, and clothing management. So you might be saying, those don't sound like Pre-ETS activities, but they really do feed into that category there of the workplace readiness, because of if they can't manage, knowing what to wear or seeing their clothing or managing certain things in their home, those auxiliary services, then it makes it difficult for them to participate in the Pre-ETS activities and to be successful as they transition to employment. So the vision rehab therapists, their involvement might be assistive technology, for job accommodations, accessing job applications, kind of helping to accommodate that, especially the visual disability, assisting with that. Maybe helping with clothing, identifying clothing, what is appropriate, things like that. The disability skills training, learning to accommodate their vision loss as it carries over into the Pre-ETS and work activities. That again, accessing job applications, things like that. Self-advocacy, both Andrew and Lillian touched on that quite a bit, but again, the vision rehab therapist helping that with them understanding of their disability disclosure, just another piece and another person in this team of helping these students be successful. And as we're doing this under Pre-ETS, then it transitions very well into then their active VR cases, and they're working with their individual plan for employment and again, building those bridges of success. And then we have our orientation mobility specialists. So they come into play with obviously orientation to work sites, organizational skills, and mobility, being able to access and orientate to a work site, get to and from a work site. Maybe it's transportation assistance, whatever it is that that student needs to be successful in that work activity that they're participating in. If we're going to go to a job shadow, they may need extra help with someone describing to them what is going on in that work environment, orientating them to that work setting. So those additional services and support to assist with the success of those situations. And once again, the self-advocacy component is another big piece that that orientation mobility specialist can assist with. So as you can see, it all ties to the Pre-ETS, but we're using more people. We're using the specializations of our counselor, our vision rehab therapist, and orientation mobility as it meets the individual needs of that student. Okay, you can go to the next one. And so some other programs and resources and tools that we've started implementing. One of those is a virtual job shadow program. And this is an online program that we're using with all of our students, all disability groups, as well as our adult population in Voc Rehab. It helps give them a virtual experience to do some career exploration, maybe do some interest assessments to find out what their interests are and what things they want to explore. Look at virtual job shadows. In a lot of our communities, one, we can't get out in the community because of COVID, or two, in our students that are in remote areas, there may not be jobs that are available in those communities to look at. So it gives them an opportunity to job shadow a job that they otherwise wouldn't have that opportunity to do. It helps with goal setting, post-secondary planning, resume building, job readiness assignments. It's a great resource and tool that we have just started using and already seeing the great benefits and success of. And it's easily accessible for visual impairments. The accessibility in there has been very great with that. Another resource and program that recently have started on is called Putting Your Best Foot Forward, and this is through the Mississippi State University. And Lily and I actually went through a training program with this, and it's a pretty in-depth program of kind of a job club, I guess, for lack of better terms. Helps with job search skills training for youth with visual impairments. And a facilitate job search training program for students with disabilities to focus on job search, self-efficacy, learn proactive approaches to finding employment, and strategies to overcome the barriers to employment. So the emphasis of this program ties greatly into Pre-ETS activities of teaching job search skills, improving their self-presentation. How do they present themselves in an interview, in a job situation, those sorts of things. Boosting their self-efficacy. So along with that, self-advocacy and being confident in themselves and understanding their disability and how to present their abilities. Encouraging proactivity. Again, those sorts of things. Getting them out there to build themselves opportunities for success. Promoting goal setting and enlisting social support. So part of that program also is, as we said in the schools, a lot of times these students have some supports right in that school, but building the supports beyond that. Families, school, other providers, the rehab counselors, people in their community, whatever that may be, helping them to develop and build that support system around them. And then another one that we've just recently started really looking at, the Northwest Association of Blind Athletes really is a program for physical activity, but they have recently put together an 8-week program that they're doing in some other states that is an emphasis on the Pre-ETS activities. that looks at self-exploration, some of your workplace readiness training, career exploration, some of the independent living skills that carry over into that workplace readiness, time management, resume writing, interview skills, practicing, things like that. So I guess the big message with all this is we don't do it alone. It really takes a team to be successful with these students, all students, and especially our students with significant needs and disabilities. I can go to the next one, and then we're at questions. So we'll open it up. I don't know if there's been anything else pop up on the questions while I'm talking. But we'd like to open it up to questions now and hear your feedback. And
again,
yeah, I think even, or if somebody even wanted to just share a positive maybe experience that they've had with Pre-ETS or an activity that they've done with their contract, I know that can always be helpful for schools that are just starting out to not really know where to go with what they're going to do.
one other comment I forgot to make, we have been working diligently on our new website. And so I fortunately don't have the link in that, but maybe that's something Kim can send out later. But our website has a great overview of what we talked about today, also has links to the school contract information, forms, really a great resource for anybody out there to look at. And it also has the contact people for all of our Pre-ETS specialists, because we have a specialist in each region of the state. So like Andrew's in the Missoula Western region, and Lillian's here with me in the Central with Great Falls, but we have people in the eastern part and the southern part, and all over the state. So that our website is a great resource for any of you to get connected as well.
I see that someone's having an issue unmuting, but I can't see who it is. Oh, Sandy?
there is not the ability to unmute during this webinar, so we'd need Sandy to type in her comments. Sorry about that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh yeah, and there is our contact information as well.
I see. I think this is Sandy. I don't know. Is it? No,
Chris has a comment saying being involved in Pre-ETS allowed them to purchase a vending machine in their school. Students fill the machine, and this year they are in charge of supplies and when to reorder. So that's awesome. So it's allowed you to set up a work experience right in your school.
Have you guys looked at doing summer camps with your school, Chris?
The response was no. Sandy's question is now in the chat. What does CPS stand for? What's an example of one in other regions, specifically South Central Montana?
Are you meaning CRP?
Yeah, I don't know what CPS is.
So it might have been CRP, Community Rehab Provider, are the agencies that Voc Rehab contracts with, like Opportunity Resources is a Missoula-based one, Family Outreach is out of Helena Butte area, and then Lillian would be able to speak to Great Falls, but there's around the state, there's different providers.
So South Central would be our Billings region, and there are providers out of the Billings region that, the problem with CRPs is they're centrally located, like in our Billings, Great Falls, Missoula, are more larger communities. So some of them reach out into the rural communities and some don't reach out as far. So Sandy, if you're wanting more specific, we can put you in contact with the Billings office. Yes, Ashtik answered for you. Thank you, Ashtik. She is our Pre-ETS specialist in the Billings region.
But yeah, like Sherry said, it can be challenging at times, and this is where the school contracts have been really beneficial, is that in the past, we were mostly relying on CRPs, and as Sherry said, most of them are based in a more like central area like Missoula, and they may be willing to serve, you know, up to a certain point, but that leaves out several of the schools. And so by doing contracts, schools can actually, and some of our schools have hired staff out of the school contract to specifically do pre-ETS. And then their staff people go out and do essentially what a CRP does. And so that's one route that schools have chosen. And honestly, that seems to be, in my opinion, probably the best way to go, is to have somebody in-house that can do all of these services, especially in a rural area. Obviously, that depends on how much money you're receiving, you know, for the contract and whether it's feasible. But otherwise, every area does have CRPs. It's just a matter of how far they'll travel. And then that's where sometimes utilizing, you know, the school contract along with this pre-ETS specialist, you'll be able to find somebody that can provide those services for those youth.
And thank you, Astik, for answering Sandy's questions in the question with your region. Thank you.
This is Teresa, and I have a question for you all. With having to do so many things virtually, have you been compiling a list of, say, virtual pre-ETS activities and how schools, others can be providing those services in a virtual world these days?
We have. So last year, right as things kind of shut down, the WinTAC created, and NTACT created some amazing resources for pre-ETS that can be done remotely and remote services in general. So those are WinTAC and NTACT are great resources. We have our virtual job shadow program that any student is eligible for that fills out the pre-ETS request form. And then, yeah, I mean, otherwise too, we also have on our website, there's a resources page as well. But yeah, we have kind of compiled and talked to schools and talked to other specialists around the state to kind of see what they're all using. But that is a good point, because that's been a challenge as well.
Yes, and I see in the chat that someone thinks our contact information is transposed, Sherry, but I believe they are correct.
I saw that. Yeah, I just was responding. They're so close. Sometimes I actually give out Lillian's number, my mistake.
It's because we're in the same office, so we're giving you guys our direct landlines instead of the general office number.
Any other questions?
And I would say too, if people have questions right now and you're wanting to get a hold of us, the landline's probably not the best route. I mean, some people are tech savvy and they figured out how to get their phones to transfer to their cell. I typically most of us are working from home most of the time. And so the work cell that we have listed is probably the best way in email. But you can certainly call our landline and we'll get back to you, but cell phone's definitely going to be the easiest way to reach most of us right now.
Chris asked, how do we access what Andrew just talked about? That is in your webinar presentation. You can contact Andrew, and also on our website has all that information. And I believe, Chris, you're in the Polson school, so that would be Andrew's area to reach.
Lillian, or not, Lucy.
Oh, Lucy. Okay.
Oh, Kalispell. Yeah, Kalispell and Lucy is our pre-ETS specialist. She's on this webinar as well. I believe I saw her in there as attendee, but she serves the Kalispell region all the way to Charlotte and St. Ignatius. And then she has Sanders County and all of those. So I go up to Arlene.
This is Kim. Just ignore, for the presenters, the question that I just put into the chat. I was just sending myself the WinTAC distance service delivery link, which I'll post in the chat for everyone. And I've also posted the Montana Vocational Rehabilitation Pre-ETS webpage that Sherry mentioned. I posted the URL for that as well.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to give a shout out to all our pre-ETS specialists, because before we had pre-ETS specialists, the counselors were doing it all, and it's awesome to have a team now of them assisting with the counselors, and we have a dynamic team. So they're new and getting out there, but we have a dynamic pre-ETS team. So it's exciting to see how things are going to go.
Yeah, and like Sherry says, we are all relatively new, except Andrew. He knows everything. So if you have any questions, direct them to him.
Just fake it till you make it. That's my motto. But no, we definitely, and that's another thing too, Chris. I know some of the questions in chat were related to maybe some things that weren't going well before. And so Sherry has a good point, is it was really not practical, the setup that we had before. So part of our decision to create contracts was so that we can serve students, knowing how large Montana is. That's a way to get schools involved and to provide services, especially in areas where CRPs won't necessarily travel. But then also with the general VR side of things, it was not practical for a general VR counselor to serve all of the schools in their area and do general VR. I tried both and I felt like I did pretty decent at both, but not as good as I would have liked to. And so by having it separated and keeping in mind too that most of the pre-ETS specialists are new, it's a new program, and so it's going to take a little bit of time to continue to build off of it, but know that you do have more resources in place now. So knowing, you know, Chris, you'll have Lucy to work with you through the Kalispell region. And so there is a lot more individualized support that we can provide now by having the separate bureaus. So just, you know, utilize the contact information from our website, and any questions you have, reach out to the specialists in your area. If you're not sure, you're having trouble finding out who that is, you can reach out to either Lily and Sherry or myself, and we could share their contact information with you. But yeah, if things are coming up and you're not sure what to do, or you have some concerns with how things were maybe handled in the past, just reach out to us and we can try to help resolve whatever issues you have.
This is Kim. I have a couple of closing comments before we end the webinar, but before I make those comments, Sherry, Lillian, or Andrew, any final remarks from any of you?
Nope.
Thank you guys so much for having us and letting us talk at you for the past hour and a half. We appreciate the opportunity and hope we could just at least talk, if not work with all of you in the near future.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, just a reminder to all of our audience members that a short survey will pop up on your screen as soon as the webinar ends. Please do take the time to fill that out. If you do not have time to fill it out today, you will receive the link again tomorrow in a follow-up email from GoToWebinar. So if you don't fill it out today, please do so tomorrow. We do have 2 more webinars scheduled in our work experience series. The next one is Customized Employment with Ellen Condon and Sherry Reed. That will take place on January 14th from 1 until 2:30 Mountain Time, and the flyer and registration information for that will go out in the next couple of weeks. And then on February 11th from 12 until 1:30 Mountain Time, we welcome back Kim Nora Scrano for Designing Meaningful Work Experiences. The recording from today's presentation will be posted to the Montana Deaf Blind Project and Transition and Employment Project Training Archives web pages. That's a mouthful. And I've put the URL or website addresses for both of those pages in the chat box. It can take up to 2 weeks for us to get the transcript edited, the captions added, and the videos posted, but do be watching for those, and please share them with people that you think might benefit from this information. I'd like to thank all of our presenters today, Sherry, Lillian, and Andrew. Fabulous information. I very much appreciate hearing about all of the exciting new things happening in the world of pre-employment transition services in Montana. Thanks to Teresa and Ellen for co-moderating and co-organizing today. Thank you to our captioning professional, and thank you especially to all of you who, as Lillian said, spent an hour and a half of your day today to learn more about Montana pre-employment transition services. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.